All right, so let's dive into this Burna Boy thing that's got everyone talking.
Yeah.
You've probably seen the video by now. Grammy-winning artist just casually handing out $50,000 in cash
Just like that.
at a club in Nigeria.
Wow.
It went viral, instantly sparked a ton of debate online. Some are saying it's pure generosity, others are questioning his motives, and that's what we're going to be unpacking today.
Well, it's interesting because this isn't just about like a single act of giving, you know?
Yeah.
It really shines a light on some bigger things: celebrity culture, economic inequality in Nigeria, and how social media shapes how we see these events.
Yeah, absolutely. And right off the bat, that amount, 50 grand cash, it's a powerful image.
Oh, yeah.
It makes you think, what was Burna Boy really trying to do? Was it genuine kindness, a publicity stunt, or could it be a bit of both?
It's a great question, and I don't know if we can know for sure, but to really understand this whole thing, I think we need to think about the context.
Okay.
Nigeria has a very significant wealth gap, and so when someone like Burna Boy with his global success does something like this,
Carries a lot of weight.
it's almost like he's become a symbol, right, of what's possible for Nigerians.
Exactly.
And that probably adds another layer to how people see this whole cash giveaway.
Absolutely. And the podcast we're looking at today really captures how people felt about it.
Okay.
Some people were totally blown away by his generosity.
Okay.
They saw it as him giving back to his roots, acknowledging the struggles of a lot of Nigerians.
That makes sense, especially given what he represents to people there.
Yeah.
But the podcast also highlighted a lot of criticism too, right?
Yeah, it did. And it's important to understand where that criticism is coming from.
Okay.
Some listeners felt that the gesture was, definitely eye-catching,
Yeah.
but it didn't really have a lasting impact.
Mhm.
There were questions about whether that money could have been used in a more strategic way to address the roots of poverty or inequality.
So instead, this one-time kind of big splash,
Right.
maybe investing in education or community programs, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. And one listener in the podcast made a really interesting point.
Okay.
They said, imagine if that $50,000 was used for things that try to tackle poverty or make education more accessible.
Right.
Could that have created more meaningful change? It really makes you think about what giving really means.
I think that's a really crucial point.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in the spectacle of it all, but then what happens after that?
Right.
This Burna Boy situation, it seems like it's making us think about those deeper questions.
Yeah, I agree. And it also brings up this larger trend we're seeing, which is celebrity philanthropy, especially among African stars.
Okay.
It's becoming much more common to see these big gestures, and they're often filmed and shared online.
Right.
And it leads to the question, are they really trying to help others, or is it more about creating a certain image for themselves?
It's that classic question of publicity versus philanthropy, isn't it? And social media just makes everything louder.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
It makes it much harder to tell what's genuine kindness and what's a carefully crafted PR move.
Absolutely. And the podcast host made a point that I think is worth considering.
Okay.
Could Burna Boy giving out cash like that have also been a way to promote himself?
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible he had both motivations?
It's a very nuanced situation, and like we were saying before, there's not a simple answer, but this is where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Would this whole thing have gotten the same amount of attention, the same conversations, if it wasn't filmed and shared online?
That's a big question. How much did the cameras being there and the potential for the video to go viral, how much did that affect everything?
It really makes you think about how social media not only affects how we see giving, but also the reasons people give in the first place.
For sure.
Yeah.
This whole thing with Burna Boy, it really makes you think about the different ways people approach giving back.
It does. We're seeing more and more of these big public displays of giving, especially with social media, and how fast things can spread.
But like we were talking about with Burna Boy, there's that question of how much of an impact it actually makes.
Yeah, the podcast we're talking about pointed out that tension between doing something big and flashy once versus taking a longer-term approach.
It reminds me of that saying, give a man a fish, you feed him for a day.
Yeah.
Teach a man to fish, you feed him for a lifetime.
Exactly. With a big gesture, you get attention, maybe inspire other people to give, but the effect might not last.
Right. It's like a burst of energy, but then...
That's the criticism, is that those resources could be used for something that has more staying power, like investing in education or helping people start businesses.
So with Burna Boy, could that $50,000 have been used to start a scholarship fund or give small loans to businesses in Nigeria?
Exactly. That kind of approach helps people in the long run. It's about getting at the root of inequality, not just the symptoms.
And that brings us to another part of this whole conversation, which is the power dynamics involved.
Absolutely. Celebrities, especially someone like Burna Boy in his own country, they have a lot of influence.
Yeah, for sure.
What they do, what they say, it carries a lot of weight, and that can really amplify causes and get people moving.
Yeah. So how do they handle that responsibility? Where's the line between using their platform for good and maybe using it for their own benefit?
That's a tough question, and it's not always clear cut. The podcast host made a good point: good intentions and self promotion. They can both be there at the same time.
So it's about being able to see those nuances, right? To look deeper and try to figure out the real motivations.
Right. And that's where we, as people consuming media and information, we have to think critically. We have to ask those hard questions. Look at the bigger picture, the long-term effects, not just the headlines.
If you're listening, think about a celebrity who's known for doing philanthropic work. Does it feel genuine to you? What makes you think that?
It's a good way to check in with ourselves because at the end of the day, it's about forming our own opinions and figuring out what giving means to us.
This whole Burna Boy thing, it's really just a small example of a much bigger conversation, isn't it?
It is. It shows us our own values and how we define helping in our own lives. Do we value those big, flashy gestures or those everyday acts of kindness? Is it about giving money or volunteering our time and skills?
It's easy to get caught up in the world of celebrity and these huge actions, but the truth is we all have the power to make a difference in our own ways.
That's so important to remember. This deep dive isn't just about breaking down Burna Boy's actions. It's about starting a conversation about our responsibility to be involved citizens and find ways to contribute in a meaningful way, whether it's big or small.
So as we keep unpacking this, I want to leave you with this. How can we move past those surface level observations and engage with these issues in a way that's both informed and impactful? How can we make sure our actions are giving creates real and lasting change?
Oh.
You know, it's funny, this whole Burna Boy thing brings up so many different points of view.
It's like a Rorschach test almost for how people see wealth and generosity and celebrity.
Right. It makes you think, do we automatically assume someone's generous just because they're rich? Or are we more likely to be suspicious when a wealthy person makes a big show of giving?
Those are great questions to think about.
The podcast really made me think about my own biases. It's easy to get caught up in the spectacle of it all, but it's important to remember there's always more to the story.
Absolutely. And we can't forget how much social media shapes how we see things. A single act like Burna Boy giving out cash, it can get amplified and interpreted in so many different ways online.
It's like social media creates this echo chamber where what we already believe about wealth and giving just gets reinforced no matter what's really going on.
I see what you mean. It becomes less about the act itself and more about how it fits into our own narratives about celebrity culture and social responsibility, even economic inequality.
That's exactly why I think these deep dives are so important. They make us think critically, go beyond the surface, and really grapple with these complicated issues.
That's the point.
Yeah.
And this case study, using Burna Boy as an example, has really highlighted those complexities. It's not about judging anyone. It's about using this as a way to look inward.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to go back to that thought-provoking question from the podcast. Imagine you had Burna Boy's resources, the fame, the influence, the money. What would you do with it to make a real difference?
What cause would you support? What kind of change do you want to see?
Would you go for those big, splashy, attention-grabbing things, or would you take a more strategic, behind-the-scenes approach?
There's no right or wrong answer, but by even thinking about this, we become more aware and intentional about our own actions and the impact we want to have.
It reminds us that we all have the power to make a difference no matter what we have, whether it's volunteering our time giving to a cause we care about, or just raising awareness about an issue.
Exactly. This wasn't about giving you all the answers. It was about giving you the tools to think critically, ask the right questions, and keep exploring these complicated topics.
So the next time you see a headline about a celebrity doing something charitable, take a second to stop and think.
Think about the different sides of the story. Look a little deeper and challenge yourself to see beyond the surface.
Because in a world with so much information, it's more important than ever to be thoughtful, curious, and to never stop learning.
That's what a true deep dive is all about. Embracing the complexity, finding different points of view, and using knowledge to make positive change.
So keep those conversations going, keep asking questions, keep exploring, and most importantly, keep diving deep.